So the only modification that really, like when we talk about like dumbbells or when we get to the bar, it's the same thing, all right? One of the ways that we modify it is changing the angle that we work at. So what's going to happen here when Ahmad goes to do a dumbbell bench press now, he's going to go through the same patterns, all right? So he goes to do a regular bench press, arms at 45, but what's had to happen now is that he's got to even create more shoulder blade suppression and retraction, and he's creating more external rotation in his shoulder, all right? So what ends up happening, and then we can talk about the deltoid, because his deltoid's now going to have to do a little bit of abduction here, because now he's starting to go up and work into more flexion, all right? So when we look at doing a dumbbell bench press, when we look at doing any of our dumbbell work that we just did, we can also do it from this position. So in this, especially for those of you that had a little bit of a hard time with the pec fly, you can load this up and change the angle your bench is at. For some people, that actually helps. All right, so he's just going to go through another couple reps. Okay, it's all the same thing. He can breathe and expand into that rib cage. Push out. The one thing you see a lot of people do, because they'll try to put a lot of weight on this exercise, is their lower back will start to come up. So when we talk about creating tension, the only thing we start to add is we start to get, like as we raise a bench, is Ahmad's going to take his lower rib cage, he's going to try to breathe into the lower part of his rib cage and use his air to push it into the bench. Do it again. It starts to create a little bit more tension. Okay? Cool. Relax. Sit up all the way. Sit up all the way. Great. Whee. So now let's talk about the deltoid. We'll come back, because that way we can clear up all these benches, then we'll go to the cables just to show you a couple other things. All right? When we talk about your deltoids, it covers the whole shoulder. So basically all the fibers, if you want to just like stand up real quick, all right? And then just face them. So all the fiber, well, like so they can see your shoulder. Right? So when we look at a deltoid, he basically has fibers that come across, straight over the top, and then from the front, and they all connect to the same spot. So when we look at changing the angle, that's why I said you get a little bit more deltoid when we start to increase the angle, because what ends up happening is that deltoid really abducts your shoulder. It also creates some flexion of the shoulder, and it can also do some extension of the shoulder. So that, because it's coming from 3 different little angles. Anybody ever seen like, anybody watch WWE? Yeah, Triple H, right? Triple H is a WWE wrestler. All right, he's like the CEO of the WWE. If you listen to the guy that trains him, he's like a guy named Joe DeFranco, who has worked with him specifically on just achieving the look of like having really round shoulders, which is basically, let's just make your deltoids as big as possible. So the more we raise up a bench, the more we get some of that deltoid. So now Ahmad's just going to go on that bench, and one of the key things here to think about is that deltoid is pulling from your shoulder blade and your collarbone. So it's basically pulling from 2 different points. So when Ahmad goes to do this dumbbell shoulder press, he's going to line himself up to where, like, if he pushes here, and this is where we get into weird angles, when he pushes here, he's externally rotated. So now, in that position, the end of his deltoid is now on the back side of his arm. All right? So he's going to, this is stretching out the front side of his deltoid more, so he's going to press up, and then come back down, and he's pressing straight above his head. Now, this is one thing we noticed with Ahmad, this is kind of funny. If you have a hard time controlling the shoulder blade, what ends up happening is, if you were to look at Ahmad from the side, it's almost like he's leaning forward with these dumbbells. Not necessarily a bad thing, because he's not totally standing. We can even take him up a notch. And make him totally vertical. Oh yeah. Anybody notice what happens with his bench? So when we look at shoulder, if we were to really have the you can put those down just so your arms don't get tired, okay? If we were to look at shoulder, we were to put everything so we create that hollow position that we talked about with our core. If we were to have full range with our shoulder, we'd be able to have our hand, we would line up with our shoulder, hip, and ankle all in one thing. It would just stack up. A lot of times, anybody ever seen like people, they like raise their hands like in chapel or something, and they like have to arch their back to get here? Or somebody putting something above their head and you have to arch back. A lot of what that is not being able to control that shoulder blade. Okay? So when we look at that shoulder position, understand that for Ahmad, this position right here, the full up, probably not the best for him right now because he doesn't have the ability to move that shoulder blade up because that shoulder blade's now got to protract and suppress all at the same time to be able for him to get overhead completely in that position. For him, he might not have access to that right now, just mobility stuff, okay? But when we look at the deltoid, he can press there. The other thing, we're just gonna do this seated, okay? Just so people can kind of see it. He's gonna stick his arms down by his side. And in that position, he's just gonna raise out to the side, right? Because abduction, this is just pure abduction of the shoulder. He just raises, and it's just that deltoid pulling against that shoulder blade and the collarbone, and pulling that arm up and down. Do one more. And you can even see, like, he'll start to quiver right here on the edge of the shoulder. Hold, right? You can kind of see him quivering right here. His deltoids are just in full out contraction. They're in relax, okay? So here's what I want you to do. I just want you